Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, fellow televiewers across Africa and the rest of the world. You are welcome to this show, the Pan-African Voices. Today we have a very special edition for you, Rise Up for a New Africa. For the first time in the history of Africa, the post-colonial Africa, we have seen groups of African people, the people of Biafra, the people of Ambazonia, and the Oduduwa people of the Yorubas gather themselves to make a big protest in a march past and a protest demonstration in front of the European Parliament in the middle of Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, you are all welcome. We'll bring you this and much, but first let's have this break. Good morning, fellow televiewers on the ACN television network. Welcome to another episode of the No Pony Talk Show. In the making, history made already. This is a show where we talk the people's language for Biafra and the people's language for Ambazonia, the Pidgin English. And I'm me, Capo Daniel, una host. So I'll play this music and welcome everybody. And we'll go straight into this topic today, which is very, very important and very, very critical. Welcome back once more to this program, Africa Rising for a New Africa. The people of Ambazonia, the people of Biafra, the people of Oduduwa, of the Yoruba land have risen up to fall no more. This is a new phenomenon that has taken place in Europe, right in the heart of the European Parliament. We have seen a march past, a huge demonstration of force, and this phenomenon is the first time post-colonial Africa where you have seen indigenous African people taking initiative of themselves, by themselves, in Europe to demonstrate for one thing, demonstrate for self-determination for their country, their identity. We are going to bring an in-depth coverage of this protest march, and I am sure you will not see this on CNN, you will not see this on Al Jazeera, you will definitely not see this on your local African TV network in Nigeria, in Cameroon, in Namibia, in Gambia, and across Africa. Because as they say, the revolution shall not be televised, but real revolutionaries who continue to speak for the people. The ACN television, an Ambazonian-based communication network, is a voice for true Africa, true Pan-Africanism, and I am here as an indigenous person from the former British Southern Cameroon that we call Ambazonia to bring to you an African unique perspective in Pidgin English. My English is Pidgin Standard, so in case you are checking off your grammatic error, please, you are very welcome to my world. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome. So we will start this presentation by giving you a background for all Africans from Kenya to Uganda who are watching me for their first time. You probably have never heard of the name Ambazonia. You probably have never heard of the name Biafra, let alone Odudu State in Nigeria. So I'm going to give you a good perspective of the struggle of these people so that you can have a better understanding of the future of Africa. Before the coming of our states and nations, before the coming of the independence that took place over 60 years ago, the African people and the black people as a whole, from the Caribbean to our continent Africa, have had a dream for a united state of Africa. A dream where all black people can have an army, a common economy, for us to be a contender in the international stage. Over 60 years after that dream, that have been preached about by Martin Luther King, that have been preached even by Malcolm X, and Pan-Africanists such as Kwame Nkrumah have faded away. Today, Africans do not even know what is called an African Day. The 25th of May, which is supposed to be celebrated across our continent with our students celebrating with their best of attires, is not being celebrated in over 80% of African states. The love for Africa have gone cool. We no longer care about each other. Where did we go wrong? My name is Capo Daniel. I'm the spokesperson of the Ambazonia Governing Council. I'm also an independent activist and a Pan-Africanist, a civil liberty activist, Today I'm going to give you this wonderful show, and I hope it's going to impact you and inspire you to dream once again for an African continent that will be a home for all black people. That is going to guarantee African dignity and make sure that black life will matter, even in the United States. Because so long as Africa is poor, so long as 95% of the youth of Africa are not satisfied and are looking for greener pastures, so long as our women are willing to take the journey through the desert, to sacrifice their children in the seas of the Libya, to be impregnated with the sole purpose that their own baby will enable them to have a chance to become European citizens, Africa have no hope. But a new hope for Africa have risen up. Rise up for a new Africa. This is the topic of today. The Ambazonian people, the Oduduwa people, and the Biafran people, for the first time, on their own, non-motivated or sponsored by Europeans, have gathered in Europe to call for self-determination in Africa. Some people may be wondering, but why should Pan-Africanists be talking about the separation of Nigeria or the separation of Cameroon? So welcome to this program. We are going to get right deep into this conversation. So ladies and gentlemen, today the world faces a very big crisis of the world order. The Russian war against Ukraine is reminiscent of the period when Germany decided to invade the rest of Europe. At one time, the Europeans had gathered themselves in Germany in what we call the Berlin Conference to decide for themselves how the world will be partitioned according to their power, legalize imperialism, and they began in Africa, started colonizing our people, seizing their sovereignty by force. They destroy African countries like the Zulu nation. They destroy the Kenembunu. They destroy a lot of empires in Africa, destroy even the Biafra state, and rebuild for themselves colonies that are used to fuel their industrial revolution, where our resources are extracted. Our human resources are extracted as slaves in America to work in plantation in Haiti. Our people had no hope. For over 300 years, our people had no hope. They had no chance to fight against a well-organized army, a civilization that have learned from us Africans and modify our weapons, learn how to produce gunpowder from the Chinese, and weaponize their youth to conquer our land and take away our resources and drag our parents to their shores as slaves. Today, the country with the second highest number of black people is not in Africa, it's in Brazil. Our brothers and our sisters are in the Colombia. They are in the Caribbean. They are all over the world, taken away from their homeland, Africa. So today, I want to tell you the story about the Biafran people, the new generation of Africa who have risen. The African generation that is going to unite the continent of Africa and bring truly the vision of a United States of Africa to become a reality. What we see today, the Ambazonians, the Biafrans, the Oduduwas gathering themselves in the middle of Europe is a big dream come true. I'm sure Kwame Nkrumah in his grave will start to smile that Africans have awakened themselves. In case you are under illusion or you have been captivated by the mindset of colonialism, you may listen to me and think what I'm saying is strange. But I'm telling you, this is the future of our continent. And it is right at your doorstep. So you better listen. When the Germans decided to invade Poland and the rest of Europe, the Europeans, they realized that the imperialism that they have legalized in the Berlin Conference was now being imposed on them. The German too was now colonizing European countries, redrawing their borders like the Europeans had drawn the borders of Africa. And out of a sudden, the Europeans, they realized themselves, just like now, because of the war between Russia and Ukraine, the Europeans are now realizing themselves that you cannot be declaring sovereign countries as your sphere of influence, like the Americans were doing in the Northern Americas and Southern American territories, like the Europeans were doing in Africa. France having 14 African countries like their spheres of influence, where they choose who is going to be in power. They carry coup d'etat, replacing presidents like the one in Chad, and Africans have to stay quiet. Now, today, they are reminiscing. They are now looking upon the war and saying that Russia must respect the sovereignty of Ukraine. Just like the Africans, we benefited from the conflict between the Germans and the West and their allies. Today, we stand in the crossroad for a new dawn of African unity and African freedom. I want to take you and tell you a little bit story before we go into our presentation of today. There is this gentleman who is called Mr. Jason Kosa. He was a British colonial army in Namibia. Mr. Jason was a colonial soldier in Namibia, recruited by the British, called to national service to go and fight the Germans, to stop the Germans' invasion of England, to go and fight and defend France, to give freedom in Europe so that they can build a new war system that we have today in the name of the United Nations. He was abandoned after that war to suffer his retirement without any pension, to live and die in Namibia. I also want to introduce you to these two friends, the Bioki and his friend Fundi, who were British colonial army in Kenya. These two gentlemen, according to an interview they granted recently, they explained that the British people convinced them that fighting against the German will protect Africa because German will come and take their land. So the Europeans, the British, the Belgians, the French, who had taken African lands, were now convincing Africa that we have to stop German from taking their land. So what a contradiction. The same thing we are seeing today in the war between Ukraine and Russia. There is a contradiction. The Europeans are saying that Russia is violating the sovereignty of Ukraine. But it was the same thing America was doing in Afghanistan, in Venezuela, in Cuba. So they are complaining of the same thing. And this should make them to understand the logic that all for one, one for all. The international rule-based system is the only thing that can guarantee war peace. And that is the future of the war. So this topic today is titled, Rise Up for a New Africa. This new reality is being championed by people that are free from colonial education. Indigenous people of Biafra, Ambazonia, Oduduwa are championing a new uprising that will soon arrive at your doorstep anywhere you are in Africa. A new alliance of African states that are going to free Africa from colonialism and bring true African unity, where we will indeed have an African continent that is united. There is also the story of this lady. She's called Grace. She's a widow whose husband also fought for the British people, and he died. She never saw her husband return back from the war front. Her name is Grace. I want her picture to come up there. She also was from Gambia. Overall, according to the statistic presented by the European Union and also the Oxford University, apart from the over 1 million who were active duty servicemen in Africa who joined the war to fight in Europe, you also have over 5 million Africans. Some of them were military laborers used to transport weapons and stuff like that, while some of them were active combatants. These are the pictures of the Africans who liberated Europe. African soldiers, buffalo soldiers, fighting for the freedom of the world. Africans did not just fight to liberate Europe. They were fighting to free themselves because the Europeans promised them that fighting to stop German is going to create a new world order where no country will be bigger than another country, no country will be allowed to colonize another country, and every country will sit in the same table in the United Nations. But that is not the case of today. So after the Second World War and the new world order being put in place called the United Nations, there was hope in Africa. Hope for freedom. Hope for independence. And the campaign for freedom in Africa took place across Africa, championed by Kwame Nkrumah for a free Africa. A new day had become. And behold, The Europeans, out of shame, gave us independence. They tried to resist. We battled them. But against the backdrop of what we did to free Europe, African countries were given independence by force. The Europeans, who were now free countries, they didn't just give us that freedom and allow us to go, but they came back and do to us what Kwame Nkrumah had warned us that they would do. They will kill our leaders and make sure that Africa will never see a day of light to be equal with Europeans. Africans will never fight by maintaining new colonialism in Africa. We saw in the case of the first African head of state after the independence that was murdered, another person but Olympio from Togo. President Olympio, a young visionary of Africa, was assassinated by the French government. I want his picture to come up there so that our people and this generation should know our history. Olympio was killed because he was a revolutionary who dreamed of a united Africa where every African country will fight and make sure that the policies that guarantees human dignity will apply to all African countries. You have revolutionary like the president of Rwanda, Jovina, who was also assassinated. You have the president of Egypt, you have Sadat, you have the president of Rwanda, Burundi, President Syrian, also assassinated by the West. You have Samuel Doe, you have Patrick Lumumba, who was assassinated with the help of the British Secret Service, the M16, and even the American CIA. He was a president in Congo who was there for the Congolese people to protect African interests. He was also murdered. So he was murdered by the West. So the African freedom that was being promised for Africans to go and fight and liberate Europe were dwarfed, was derailed by the assassination of our president, and in their place, puppet regimes were put in place, like Paul Biya, like Museveni, like many other African presidents that we see today, or regimes that we see today in Africa, successive regimes that do not represent the interests of their people. The African constitutions do not reflect the reality of those states. The political system put in place across Africa do not serve the interests of their own people. We had a generation of Africans who vie for power, not because they wanted freedom, but because they wanted that which the white man have. The real Africans who wanted freedom, who were selfless, who were willing to fight, like Kwame Nkrumah, were all killed. Then you have African politicians who were trained in Europe, like Paul Biya, were now given positions in government to become puppet states for the West. The same thing happened in Congo. The same thing happened across African countries. They have forgotten about African unity. Today, when they talk about African unity, African union, it's about preservation of this tyrannic system. Democracy, which was meant to empower the African people, was weaponized by the Europeans, where African leaders could rig election, and all they will say is that we want peace and stability, so they will maintain those dictators for their own selfish aim. Even a country like South Africa, that we look up to South Africa to help push the Pan-African agenda, to help resolve conflict in Africa and defend the African people's rights against dictatorship that seeks to undermine the rule of law by rigging election. South Africa have become a country being ruled by black people who seek to do to their own people what the white men were doing. They just love that life of looking like a white man, speaking like white people. The same thing happened across Africa. Look at what is happening today in Rwanda. According to statistics from the World Bank, the IMF, even from Western Union, private capital that have primarily driven development in Africa, 80% of those money are coming from the diaspora. Today, Rwanda, Kagame have betrayed us. Kagame have signed a deal to facilitate the transfer of diasporans. Africa who have struggled hard to invest money to go to Europe to be able to make something happen back home, to be able to invest and help others who are back home. Kagame, for the sake of small investment from England, have betrayed Africa. We have successful African states who do not mind about Pan-Africanism or the African well-being, but they seek to exploit Africa for themselves and their political agenda. Kagame is a failure. South Africa is a failure. Even today, people are questioning the legacy of Nelson Mandela. The ACN have become a reflection of British policy across Africa. They don't fight for Pan-Africanism in any shape or form. They have never brought to the forefront of international law any big issue about the wars that are going on in Africa, or even seek to mediate. South Africa should be mediating, sending peacekeeping forces, African solution for African problems. Fellow Africa, we face a continent with failed states. States that have failed to live up to the dreams of the African people. The dream of a free Africa for Africans. A dream to build institutions that are going to empower their African states. The vast majority of African countries today, they are still using constitutions that were written by the European colonizers. Those constitutions have no reflection of the reality of the people of those countries. Our traditional rulers, our culture, have no place in these African states. It is just a system of puppet elitist class that have replaced the white to do exactly what the white people were doing to our people. People of exploitation. Exploitory people. After independence were granted, one would have expected African countries, Africans, to sit together according to their own languages, according to their tribes, because that is who we are, and sit together and come to power sharing arrangement in our constitution that will guarantee a place of every tribes and every tongue within our national borders to have access and privileges that comes from the wealth that God has given African states. Since independence, Nigeria have failed to restructure itself to reflect the makeup of the Nigerian people, because we know very well, according to international principle, Nigeria is a country made up of 3 separate states, which had 3 separate evolution, legal evolution and constitutional evolution. The eastern region of Nigeria, which is the Biafra. You also have the Yoruba, the western region of Nigeria, which is the Oduduwa people. You also have the Hausa, the Fulanis in upper Nigeria. These 3 separate people, instead for them to sit down after their independence and write their constitution to be able to share power and resources in the political system, instead, they allow the British to create an issue called an amalgamation that is meant to suppress the rights of the rich areas of the Biafra region and the Oduduwa state, and give some privileges to the Hausa people and the Fulanis so that they can permit the British people to continue to exploit resources from that land. The Fulanis have gone over their head, and they are now carrying genocide in Nigeria. And the people of Biafra, they are looking for self-preservation, and they want a separate homeland where they can protect themselves and protect their own interests. The people of the Yorubas are doing the same. It's the same story in Cameroon, neighboring Cameroon, where the people of the former British Southern Cameroons, Ambazonia, they were forced into a union against their will with Cameroon. Still, that country had a good chance for the Cameroonians and the Ambazonians to sit together and formulate a constitution that will guarantee share of power and share of resources equitably across the 2 states. But instead, the French government manipulated the Cameroon state through their first president, Amadou Ahidjo, wrote a constitution for him to impose on that country that violates the right of the Ambazonian people, destroy their state institutions so that they can have access to their resources. It's the same thing we find in Tigray. It's the same thing we find in Morocco. It's the same thing we find across Africa. The African people have realized that the states that they live in do not reflect their cultural makeup or their interests. That is why today you find that indigenous Africans in Biafra, in Oduduwa, in Ambazonia, are now fighting for self-determination to have homeland of their own. They have a right. And this is the only way Africa can come to unite with indigenous people who reflect their own community and their own aspiration for self-preservation. If Monaco can be an independent country in Europe, if Switzerland can be an independent country in Europe, nobody should think of any African country as a mini-state. The problem in Africa is not that we are too divided. The problem in Africa is that we don't use our diversity. We are not united. And for us to unite, every unit must be respected. I want you to take a listen to the video of the protest that took place in Belgium. For the first time in our history as African and Black people, we have seen African people organizing themselves in Europe to demonstrate and listen to their message to the European Union. Listen.
Listen, we are not Nigerians.
We are Biafra, we are not Nigerians.
India, listen, we are not Nigerians.
We are Biafra, we are not Nigerians.
Israel, listen, we are not Nigerians.
We are Biafra, we are not Nigerians.
We are Ambazonians, we are not Cameroonians.
We are Ambazonia, we are not Cameroonians.
We are Ambazonians, we are not Cameroonians.
We are Ambazonia, we are not Cameroonians.
We are Oduduwas, we are not
Ladies and gentlemen, Africans are rising up. This is the time for Africa to rise up and take control of their territory and their destiny, and make sure there is no puppet regime. There is no imposed colonial political system over their land that will facilitate the exploitation of their resources, like it's done in Nigeria, in Cameroon, in Ethiopia, in Morocco, and in many other countries, in Congo, and in Rwanda, even in South Africa. Even democracy itself have become a big problem. Africans don't even want democracy because it has been weaponized by the West to exploit us and to keep puppet regime with the whole excuse that they want stability above human right. When it comes to Africa, human right and human life don't matter. But we are calling on Africans to listen to these people, to listen to their aspiration and the legality of what they are demanding. We were promised to live in a world of a rule-based international system where the rule of international law will apply. The people of Biafra, the people of Ambazonia, the people of Oduduwa are a people under international law and a state of their own. Their people have a right to their self-determination to determine the political outlook of their country. They cannot survive within the states where they find themselves as minority, states that are under new colonialism. Countries like these, all Africans have to support so that they will be free. Only free men can free people. An alliance between these countries and all other countries that are free should start to emerge in Africa. Every free people must emerge so that together Africa can forge an army that can protect her border and protect her political interests for us to guarantee a united Africa that will work for us. The population of the Biafrans, Ambazonia, and the Oduduwa clocks more than 150 million. It will be the biggest coalition of African people. They will be able to guarantee freedom in their territory and freedom in all the rest of Africa. We must all step up our effort to encourage this collaboration and support these movements in Africa. We should keep aside the colonial idea where we used to think that rebels were a problem. These days, we have to see that revolutionaries are the rebels, are the true freedom fighters of our time. God bless you all. And you have seen Africa risen up. You will not watch this on CNN, but we are telling you this is the future of the new states in Africa that are going to guarantee and champion African unity. Thank you for watching. Good morning, fellow televiewers on the ACN television network. Welcome to another episode of the No Conny Talk Show.
In the making, history made already.
This is a show where we talk the people's language for Biafra and the people's language for Ambazonia, the Pidgin English. And I'm me, Capo Daniel, una host. So I'll play this music and welcome everybody. And we'll go straight into this topic today, which is very, very important and very, very critical.
Stay tuned on ACN TV. We will be right back.